Hey, Nichols Bison fans, welcome back to Have You Heard, the official podcast of Nichols College Athletics. On Friday, the Commonwealth Coast Conference suspended all fall sports competition until the spring of 2021. This, of course, impacts men's and women's cross country, field hockey, football, men's golf, men's and women's soccer, men's and women's tennis, and women's volleyball. The hope is that in the coming weeks, our athletic department will continue to work in conjunction with the CCC to develop guidelines on how to safely provide our student athletes with fall non-traditional practice seasons upon their return to campus. Obviously, fans, student athletes, the fall is going to look a lot different, but the goal is to have non-traditionals in the fall, allow our teams to practice in small groups that meet the social distancing guidelines, and then return to competition in the springtime. With that, we sat down with Nichols College football head coach Dale Olmsted. We asked him about his reaction to the news of the season being suspended until the spring of 2021, and about his time at Nichols, how he got here, and where he sees the program going. Hope you enjoy. We're pleased to welcome Nichols College football head coach Dale Olmsted to the podcast. Dale, how's everything going?
Everything is moving forward, a little rocky at first, but I think now that it's been 72 hours, things have settled down a bit, and, we'll see. But thanks for having me. Sure.
Let's jump right into it. The announcement came down on Friday from the Commonwealth Coast Conference that there would be no fall sports competition through January 1st, 2021. What was your initial reaction? Were you surprised? Has it been something you've been expecting, preparing for? But once it was official on Friday, what were your thoughts?
So on Thursday night, I thought I'd actually have the answer. So I had already set up a Zoom call with the team, and while we were talking about it, and I figured I'd still keep it. I figured let them know what I know and kind of go from there and fill them in on, it wasn't looking good. With a lot of the schools around us, even that day, dropping winter sports and fall sports, that probably the outcome wasn't going to be what we wanted. But then when I got official word, actually that morning, at 10 a.m. from athletic director Gobiel, and had an emergency call with the team at 10 a.m. that day to inform them as soon as possible. It didn't make it any easier. I found myself getting emotional saying that. I think, even though you can prepare for something like that, but so much time and effort goes into a season, and it begins, after your last game. Preparation is so important. And then having that, taken away, certainly, wasn't an easy thing to tell the team. But, and having said that, I certainly understand the current situation that the state and the world is in right now, and support, our President's Council and, the Commonwealth Conference and their decision.
Sure. I can imagine back in the springtime when you'd wrapped up, well, I guess you didn't even get to wrap up spring ball, but, we had the spring sports competitions canceled, softball, baseball, and a few of the sports lost their seasons. You probably couldn't have imagined that we'd be sitting here in late July looking at canceling the football season and all. When did it start to kind of creep into your mind that, this may be a possibility, this may be something we have to deal with?
So again, it was an up and down, thought process here, in with emotions added. We had our, AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association meeting, Skype, in June 19th, I believe it was. And, they had laid out a lot of, kind of guidelines in order to have a football season, and hearing all the guidelines with, COVID groups, in the locker room and in the response team and all the preparation that was going to be needed, it did sound feasible. They talked about on the field, moving the, the coach's box and the sideline box from the 10 to the 10 to allow more social distancing on the sidelines. The away group would only be one student athlete per row. So there was they had a great thought process. And honestly, after June 19th and talking with Eric Gobiel, our athletic director, things seemed promising, and, obviously we're going to probably play weeks 1 and 2 just due to the logistics of the NCAA guideline phases thing and resocialization. But to have the season certainly seemed possible. And then literally 3 weeks later, we hear the news, and obviously I think it all started out with the Ivies and the little Ivies, I guess, announcing that they were not going to play. And then ever since then, it seems to be, daily teams and leagues canceling. So, it's certainly been an up and down journey. I never thought I'd be in the situation, but we are, and we're not looking back. We're only looking forward in preparation of the fall, and hope that we can sort of, quote, flip the seasons, practice like we would in the spring, in September and October, with the idea of playing in, late February and March to see what we can salvage the season.
Sure. And when you mentioned the little Ivies, you're speaking, of course, of the NESCAC school. So speaking of the Ivy, though, in general, Division I conference, they were the first one to cancel their season. How much did you follow the Division I protocols as far as what they were thinking, what they were doing? And of course, the difference that I'm not sure if all of the student athletes and the fans and alumni understand is that at Division I level, there's such a reliance on revenue from these Division I schools. And so the reason some of them are holding out is because of that massive loss of revenue they would have if they're not able to play games or even have games without fans, whereas we don't necessarily have that issue at Division III in terms of revenue. But my point with this is, how much did you follow the Division I's, and did you think it would help Division III's that they were playing, or would it not make a difference at all?
Well, I think you touched on it. They're almost, even though they're football, but it's still two totally different, revenue streams for I think each institution. I think obviously at the Division I level with the marketing and the video games and the licensing and all that stuff, they certainly get a lot of money. But having said that, I know sports at the Division III level, certainly is very important to each school. I think Nichols probably survives a lot on their athletics, and I think us having a program is extremely important to Nichols and a lot of other schools. So do I follow? I think the protocol, the resocialization, I should say, that the NCAA laid out early on was probably almost geared toward the higher level. They could do a lot. They had a lot more time. The kids are on the campus. They can do groups of 10 and resocialization for 2 weeks, and then do another group for another couple of weeks. And they were able to kind of space that out quite a bit, where they could potentially start in late August. For us to do that when we get to school, it made it quite impossible, as I mentioned earlier, to play weeks 1 and 2. So I think the guidelines that were set forth from the NCAA had a lot to do with the Division I, and I get that. And they probably thought it was going to go a lot smoother, but when they found out, I think when a lot of kids do show up, how many actually did have it or had it at one point was probably a little alarming. And I think since then, this is the situation we're in. So, I do follow it quite a bit. As I said, I think the guidelines stated early on had a lot to do more so with the Division I than Division III, but I can certainly see a lot of the Division III schools relying on athletics and sports being quite important. And this was not, I'm assuming, an easy decision for the presidents of the CCC.
No, Dylan, you made a great point there in terms of the Division I's having more time to set protocols and really have athletes back on campus starting out in July. And we've seen some of the testing from the Ohio States that have had dozens of kids diagnosed with COVID. Whereas at Nichols, these kids come back August 14th, August 13th, and there's 3 weeks to get ready for a season. So it's very much different. Let's get back to your team and what it was like telling the kids. You mentioned you got a little bit emotional, and maybe the range of emotions they ran. I'm sure you had some that maybe weren't surprised, and others that were annoyed at the decision and didn't agree with it, and then some that just really weren't sure what to think at this point.
Oh, first when I heard the news, again, I think it's all about the kids, and the group of seniors was probably the most, important piece that I need to take care of. These guys have blood, sweat, and tears, on the football field over the last few years, and the senior season, it's senior day, homecoming, just there's so much involved with that. And, being, it's my 28th season, I'm hoping to have some more, but, I want to be able to provide that experience that these guys want, that they're going to carry for the rest of their lives. And I do feel, I need to kind of dig deep and find some different alternatives to give them that experience without having games. And I plan on doing so. I hope the NCAA allows us to have some equipment during the non-traditional season, which is what we're going to have in front of us. I think it's important that these guys have equipment. I think, during our last staff meeting with our director of athletics, Eric Gobiel, we had a lot of the other coaches on, and I said, Eric, I'm not sure what what other sports can do and can't do as far as equipment goes in their sports, but it'd be great if we could get pads. And he's like, geez, Dale, all of the sports can do what they can do. So I'm like, well, that doesn't seem kind of right here. Like, it's like telling a hockey team you can practice, but you can't use sticks or pucks or skates. With us not being able to use helmet and shoulder pads and equipment, It's hard to replicate that. And I get nervous that not playing this fall and maybe not this spring, a lot of kids might lose that feel. And I don't want to lose that. And I'm hoping that we can get at least maybe some semblance of some pads during the fall. I don't think, having 5 weeks of pads is what I'm looking for, especially if there's no game. I'm not going to, knock these kids into the ground here. But I do think if we could end it with maybe a green white, it's kind of what the Division I and Division II teams do during their spring session. They're allowed to have full pads, and and they kind of culminate that with a with an inter-squad scrimmage. And I hope we have that opportunity. I think that will give the kids something to look forward to. But again, if not, we won't look back. I give these kids no excuses, and we're going to make do with what we have in front of us, and I'll give them the best experience that I can possibly give them.
They obviously only had a couple of days so far since the announcement came down, but how quickly did you start to shift your mindset from, all right, we're not going to have games in the fall to, well, we can have some non-traditionals, we may have some small workouts, we're hoping to get pads. Have you put different practice plans in place or different, well, if this happens, this is where we're going to go. If we can use pads, we'll do this. How quickly did you have to start to turn that around and start planning some things out?
Well, honestly, I kind of gave the weekend to think about it a little bit. I put together an email for our Eric Oldfield earlier today, just hoping to start that ball rolling. I assume it's going to take a couple of weeks here. I think there's a lot of questions and concerns that most coaches have, and it's going to fall probably on the NCAA and what they're willing to waive and what they're not. And we'll just wait to hear back from them. But it's behind me now, and it's all about preparing for a whatever season I can in September and October to keep these kids busy. I think it's extremely important. A lot of kids choose, they go to college because of athletics. It gives them an opportunity to do both, and they need both. It's extremely important. I know for a fact that I've had kids graduate this year that if I didn't recruit them for football, they would not have attended Nichols and probably not would have graduated with a degree. They would have went I don't know what they would have done. I'm not going to call out any players, but it's really great to see these kids 4 years from now where they were and where they are now, and that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on getting a degree. It's going to be the number one thing. Not that it wasn't already, but it's obviously there's more focus will be on that, and keep that camaraderie that I think football has. Keep it alive and going.
And you make a great point there. I mean, the reality of the situation is there are some student athletes who do commit in all of our sports who, maybe wouldn't have attended college if they didn't have the opportunity to continue playing athletically. How important is that for the football program now with such a large incoming class to touch base with these student athletes almost on a personal basis, on a one-on-one basis, and just see where they are and try to calm their fears of what if I can't play football at school? Maybe I don't want to come anymore. Maybe I want to stay home and go to community college. Maybe I want to work from home and save money. How do you talk to those parents, ease those fears, and have you had any situations yet where you've had to kind of just ease the nerves of any incoming student athletes or returning student athletes?
So, yeah, that process, I think, as I mentioned before, a team-wide Zoom call. And from there, we kind of break it down a little bit. Now, from that Zoom call, it went from each positional coach, texting the player, one-on-one. Hey, this situation, have you gotten the news? Just for them to acknowledge it, because I'll tell you, there's not many kids on a Zoom call at 10 a.m.
No, I can imagine.
So, they were plenty at 7 p.m., but not many, at 10 a.m. So, with that being said, it's very important that they get the information as soon as possible. Once we heard, we wanted to make sure that our staff, reached out. I have so many kids that I thought it'd be easier for me to delegate it for each position coach. So once they made that connection, now it's week 2. I just talked with Coach Stevens, our defensive line coach, earlier today, and he's going to have a Zoom call with a lot of the players. And I think communication is going to be the key. Weekly communication, just talking about what the next process will be, because things change so quickly. And I just think that's important to keep a hold of the guys, just so they know that they aren't just a football player, they're not just a student, they're part of our family, and we're here to help them. And if they choose, which some will, choose remotely. I think we already had a kid, Nick Schiffer from Germany. He already wanted to know about the remote learning, because that would be his only way to attend Nichols this fall, would be remotely. And I'm sure there'll be others. We have kids from all over the country, in the world, as So just staying in touch, not guessing it. And then when we get that number down, how many kids will come back, sort of, have practice schedule. But for those who do attend Nichols, those who want to give it a shot, we need as a coaching staff to make sure that we have something there, a little extra for them, and that would be, these practices. What it will look like right now, I still don't know. But either way, we're going to be fun. We're going to keep it lively, and these guys are going to be, better for it. So, but again, we're certainly not going to hold any kids that cannot attend. We're going to support them, and they're on our roster still, whether you're here or not. And I tell these guys all the time that they're not here just for 4 years; they're here for a lifetime. And once they're a member of this program, we're going to look out for them long before they're, after their years of here at Nichols.
You make some great points there, and the hockey program at Nichols on the men's side has a tradition of brotherhood that's been established over the years. And the football program, it seems like within the last couple of years since you took over, has really developed a family atmosphere. And talk a little bit about that, how that's developed. Because again, you came in your first 2 years, you're 1-9, and you had some turnover on player personnel. So developing that family wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do when you got there, but talk about how it's grown.
Well, trust, they have to trust me, and when you get there, when there's a new coach and they don't know too much about me, and the mindset was a little bit different, I think, when I took over. And to get these guys to care for one another, I think, it will be the defining point in any program. And watching the teams that are successful, looking at us, I'll be honest with you, when I first got here, there was just as much talent as there is now. But I think the mindset, the way they play, the hard for one another, goes beyond the field. And I think it all starts, as we say in Nichols, up on the hill, with their, I think I did the GPAs just recently to see how many kids had credits and how it was going to work. Cause we do have some upperclassmen that might not graduate in 4 years. Do they want to spread it out? There's a lot going into that, but as far as the culture goes, I think I might have had 8 seniors the first year, and this year we put them in 24. So, you look to the senior leadership. I think the college itself has made a commitment to athletics. You look at the facilities over the once I got here, where they are now, they're phenomenal, and they keep improving. So, as much as I'd like to take credit for the change, I'm happy to be a part of this process, but it's definitely a team effort, and that comes with the faculty up on the hill, Janet Newman, the relationship that they have with them, the trust that they have with the players and coaches, our alumni. I think we brought in like $30,000 last year, so everybody's bought on, and very grateful for my assistant coaches and administration at Nichols and the alumni that how we're all working together to make this possible, and I'm just trying to point them in the right direction, become leaders, both on and off the field. And they've been able to do that. And I think that is translated on the football field with the number of kids staying with our program. We grew from 90 kids. This year we were looking at about 130, 135. I have more kids in uniforms, which was great. We've already established a full-fledged, we were looking at a full-fledged JV program this year. We had Christian Academy, we had Dean, we had St. Thomas More of Connecticut. Johnson and Wales was starting a program up, but they have a club team that we were going to play. So we were looking at a 5 or 6 game schedule for our JV program. And if you look at those schools that are successful, in the Midwest, they got 150 kids on their roster. They have 2 teams that they can play, and it's just a rebuilding. And we were looking on the verge of doing that. I think this will set us back a little bit, but we still have some very talented players coming in and on the team. And, it'll be different this year. As I said, we're going to try to have everything the same, but those 10 days, really with, still practice, and you just won't have the games. And to be honest with you, most of these kids, they'll remember the games, but they'll remember each other a lot longer. And they talk about the good old days, and it's about, tailgating, looking at, tailgating's been a big deal. Having those families, being able to gather before and after the game. After the game, I'd like to give a good post-game speech, but they're really kind of like, hurry up, coach. I want to get the guys back with the family, behind the field. And I love it. And it's been great. I think, as I said, it's been everybody pitching in, and it's been a great ride. And, I'm looking forward to continuing it.
Yeah. And the hope of everyone, both at Nichols College and with the Commonwealth Coast Conference, is to almost flip your seasons, is to have your spring season, your non-traditionals in the fall, and when the spring comes around, have that full schedule, have those tailgating, have those fans back. That's ideally the scenario that everybody's rooting for at this point. You mentioned some
Absolutely.
of the administration that's been instrumental. Janet Newman was someone you mentioned. Can you speak to maybe in terms of facilities, athletic support, even up campus, from when you got to Nichols to now, maybe the biggest differences you've seen, whether it's facilities, whether it's fundraising, whether it's alumni, tailgate, anything that jumps out at you?
Well, as I said, I just think the mindset, I have to look back, probably the first recruiting class I brought in, and just having some of these kids trust me, and trust our coaching staff. I think all the coaches have had been very important. Just to let them know they're important. They're not about football. I think when I first got here, everyone told me how, when I was meeting the returning players, how great that they were and that they were Division I players, just happened to be at Division III. You don't get that really too much now. You get like, hey, this is where we are, and this is who we are. And,
proud to be a Division III student athlete.
Exactly, and they've done that. You know what? And if you work hard, no matter where you're at, and you're still working, working off the field with a degree and playing football, it's always a good thing. And this year, I actually had our first, we were going to have a professional team, get the measurables of one of our players, Josh Charles. He was in the area doing a pro day, and he wanted to stop by and just, meet Josh, get a few things on him. And, how exciting is that? At Division I level, obviously the numbers speak for themselves. It's the way to the NFL, but, if you do what you're supposed to do, they'll find you. And that's the support of, but you know what? Josh wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the help of Janet Newman and her staff and Casey and, our, academic support staff we have in the Hill and the professors and them emailing me and, making sure that these guys stay on top of things. So it's great. It's been great transition to have the respect, I think, of the players, what they have now than when I first got here. Again, that doesn't mean that the players were bad or the coaching staff was bad. It was just a different time. And, I've been fortunate enough to rebuild programs, and I'm not looking for a quick fix. I just it's going to be slow, but when it's done, it's going to be done correctly and hopefully last quite a long time. Yeah.
And this will be your 7th season at Nichols. You've almost kind of rebuilt the program twice, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But let's just touch on how you got to Nichols. You were a very successful high school coach at Millis High, and you get the call to interview for Nichols. How did that all come about?
Yeah, no, I've been fortunate. This, I think it's been my 28th season, and they're never the same. I tell you, and this will be the COVID-19 season. So certainly having a lot of years coaching helped me to where I am today. And it was a great opportunity. When I got the phone call and I knew the position was open, I've always wanted to be a college coach. But I loved high school. I really did. I loved seeing these kids, get that opportunity to play college. We had a young man last year, John Baker, going a full scholarship to BC and be able to watch him grow, and these other kids, whether it's to BC or, a CC school, it didn't matter to me. I love looking at the paper the next day and seeing how well they did. But, it's been a great ride. I didn't want any regrets. I didn't want to coach high school football the entire time and say, I could have done this. I wanted a shot, and whatever shot that was, it was Nichols, and it was great. And once I committed to the school, I never looked back, and it's been great. It's been a great ride ever since.
Sure. And obviously things were not easy your first couple of years. You had a pair of 1-9 seasons, and then kind of broke through. You went 6-4. You won your final 4 games in 2017. It was. Just talk about kind of coming out of nowhere, and really, some people may look on paper and say, "Oh, the record 6-4. That's not a bowl. It's bowl eligible at Division I, but it's not winning a conference at Division III." But talk about just kind of the process, starting to see it through, and just after those 1-9s, you go 6-4, and just the feeling of, all right, it's starting to come around now.
Yeah, that was the breakout season for sure. And then obviously we had a disappointment the following year, but getting those recruits, Chris Mullen. Tony Martinoli, all those guys, that freshman class kind of was that tipping point. We had a lot of fun. I still think probably that MIT game is the highlight of my coaching career. That gave us that 6th win, and there's been many, but, I can actually still have that saved on my phone, Hayden's call on that there. So, it's been great. And, again, I get to sit here and talk about, culture and all that, and it's extremely important. But the bottom line is when you start getting the players of that caliber to come to Nichols, to be a part of your program, that really helps. I think us as coaches, we don't get any, smarter or stupider, during the course of the season. It's just the X's and O's, not the X's and O's, the Joes and the Mo's, as they say. So, being able to get the talent, getting those kids to come in here, getting them to commit, was a big turning point. And once we kind of established that, following year we had some problems. I didn't have some of the kids return.
Anytime you lose your quarterback, everybody's going to struggle.
Yeah, and and that's the key too. If you look at the last couple of years, that's the first year in a row I think I've had back-to-back quarterbacks. Someone new every single year. We've gone through a lot of quarterbacks, so to get Mike Pena, it was a huge help. We were stable. We finally had a kid that QB, a group of guys that were going to come back, and once we've been able to build some consistency and in a place that kids want to stay, we don't get too many kids that transfer and want another no opportunity somewhere else. If they leave, there's probably money issues or whatever it may be. They're not leaving to go play for another CC school or another state school. They leave because it just isn't for them. We're very fortunate with that class. And then, as I said, we had to retool some things the following year, but I've since picked it up. And I think that class that graduated ended up going 19 and 21 over their 4 years, those seniors. So, hopefully this class will hit that 500 mark or better.
Sure, you mentioned struggled the next year, dipped to 2-8, but then you came right back, and Mike Pena was a large reason why this program bounced back. Let's talk about Mike's journey, in a sense. He started at Western New England, it didn't work out, and I believe he was sixth string, and they wanted to transfer him to a DB. He goes over to Mount Ida, plays pretty well, and then Mount Ida closes down, and he lands at Nichols. And even when he came into Nichols, I don't know if he was number one on the depth chart by any means, but talk about how he started to really turn this program around on the field and off the field.
Well, Mike was, he came from a great high school program in Sevier, and has a father that really loves the sport as well. And in fact, they have their own company going on right now, QB Velocity. Throw a little plug right there. But again, you talk about perseverance. That's why I love the sport. No matter how much you can prepare for those little games and what you think is going to happen, the next game, the next week, things change. And when he went to Western New England, things didn't work out. They had so many kids at the time, and they just felt his best chance of getting on the field would be another position. And he loved being a quarterback, and had an opportunity to go to Mount Ida and play over there with the OC. There was Matt Chapman, his former alum of Nichols as well. And he excelled his sophomore year at Mount Ida. And then the news came about the folding of the school, and here he comes again. Like, where am I going to go? And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think I had a shot at him. We had kind of talked to him a little bit. I think he wanted to go to Bridgewater State. I think his father might have went there. There was some connection to Bridgewater State. But, just staying on him, and very fortunate enough to have him come to the program. And he brought instant credibility to that spot, which we needed, for a long time. And once he got there, he never let it go. And to answer your question, we thought he could be the starting QB at his junior year, but we had other kids that were just as eager to take that role, but he wanted out. And again, as I said, I think he's my only quarterback to go 2 years in a row. And we're looking forward. His time's gone, but that has now allowed some of our younger guys to or guys that weren't ready to get the proper coaching and teaching in the off season. So we're very excited about that position. We have a lot of talent there. A couple of guys coming in as freshmen, a senior and Owen Keeney, a junior and Tyler Goodman. We all know about him, and then a couple of sophomores, with Logan Sawyer, being from Texas, is a pretty good player himself. So a lot of opportunity there, and we're looking forward to the fall and get to pace them out even a little longer.
Sure, we've had more depth at the quarterback position than we've had since I've been at Nichols, at least.
Yeah.
Last season, we mentioned they started to take that next step. They went to 5-5 in 2018, finished 6-4 last year. But still under the radar in a sense. The CCC gets lost with Endicott and Salve in Western New England. Was there a game or a point in that season where you kind of said, now we're back? And a lot of people, myself, may look at the homecoming win over Salve and snapping that long losing streak to the Seahawks as that opened people's eyes that Nichols knocked off Salve. And then you had the Western New England game, which, while you lost by 11, that's a perennial NCAA team there. And you went to their house and only lost by 11. It really, without a turnover, break here or there, or you guys come away with a W. Was there one point last season where you said, now we've hit the next level, now we're back on the map, now we're going to get that attention and we're getting rolling?
I would have to say the Salve game as well. Having beating, homecoming, beat a team of that caliber, someone that we haven't beat, I'm not sure, probably 9-10 years. It's kind of like, okay, we knocked off, as you say, one of the big three here. It's kind of like you mentioned the Big Ten earlier, Ohio State, but you kind of have those top tier teams and then kind of everybody else. And, we'd like to be in that mix now. And I think with that win, kind of was an eye-opening to the league. And then to play Western New England, I mean, we were a field goal away, to go up at halftime. That ended up being blocked and returned for a touchdown. We're down by 11, ends up being the score, like losing by 11. So these guys really, really bought in. And I think the biggest thing was they never quit. They really did. I think if you look back early on, we're down, I think 12 points at half, or Steen come back, I think 30 points unanswered. So the next game, Coast Guard, we were down the first half, came back to bring it into overtime. Couldn't quite get over the hump there, but it was, certainly these guys just never stopped. And I think you touched on it, what's the biggest difference between when I first got here and now? These guys don't quit. They fight to the end, and I love them for it.
And you've really had some playmakers on both sides of the ball that have ended up in the record books. On offense, we talk about Chris Mullins and Tony Martignoli and Mike Pita and Hunter Ferrera, who's going into his junior year. And on defensively, you had Brett McAvoy, you had Matt McEvely, you've had Mike Spaldings. So you've really had some impact playmakers on both sides of the ball that have ended up in the record books.
Yeah, as I said, makes those guys there make my job a lot easier. And we're not done. We have a young man named Hunter Ferrera who's a fantastic football player. Josh Pierre-Charles, still on the team. Defensively, you probably have to look at Joe Cox. He'll be a junior next year.
All-conference player.
Yeah, all-conference there. So, we have a lot of guys coming back. And as I mentioned before, we have a lot of new guys that have, a year of post-grad year experience that I think is very important. So, things are looking great, and we're very, very excited about the class coming in. Hopefully things work out, that we can keep a lot of them, keep these guys together, and just make our nucleus even stronger. And whenever we hit the field again, we'll be ready.
And one of those players that will be new for the Bison next year is your son, Hayden. And I remember Hayden, he was on the sidelines with his friends during the early years, and now he's put on a Bison uniform. Talk about how exciting it is to coach him and his journey from Sacred Heart to Nichols.
Yeah, no, it was, I've been able to coach him in a lot of sports, baseball, basketball, but never football, obviously, because whether I was in high school or college, I'm kind of away from the home then. So, yeah, this is a unique opportunity. And, I was asking him, you sure you want to do this? The coach's son in college isn't like probably being in high school, where guys go home. You're with these guys, all the time. But as you mentioned, he's grown up with this program. He's looked forward to the opportunity. Obviously, when you're an athlete, you see some interest at a higher level. You want to pursue that, and I certainly support him 100%. But he was redshirted at Sacred Heart and felt that he didn't think he's has no plans on going to the NFL. Wants to get a degree in business and play football and have fun, and thought that Nichols provided that better opportunity for him. And I'm happy as a father and as a coach to have someone like him a part of our program.
That's excellent. Dale, as we wind the podcast down, I think it's important for everyone to know that the decision to postpone sports by the CCC and with Nichols was not something that was easily done. There were daily meetings for hours on end with athletic directors and presidents and athletic trainers and support personnel for all of the programs. And it just, at the end of the day, this was the safest protocol to move forward with. So as we say that, Dale, the fall's obviously going to look a lot different for your team. Like I mentioned before, the seasons are somewhat flipped. Is there something you want to tell the fans, the alumni, the student athletes, something, just words of encouragement at a time where you may have some people just kind of hanging their heads a little bit and feeling down about what's going on?
Well, just, as I mentioned before, the football program in all sports, represents life. No matter how hard you work, doesn't guarantee yourself a win. So tomorrow's a new day. Good times and bad times do not last. I expect this to go by very quickly. And once it happens, that we're going to be ready. So, we're not going anywhere. Our guys are excited. We're excited to be a part of the Nichols family. This is only going to allow us to get better this extra time and to work on our programs and work on our things. So we're going to maintain a positive attitude no matter what happens. And we're going to keep going forward. And we're not going to stop until we get that conference championship. So whatever's presented in front of us, we're going to maintain that mentality and look forward to when we get that opportunity to play again, that we'll be ready.
Dale Olmsted, Nichols College head football coach, thanks so much for joining us on Have You Heard. Stay safe, and we'll see you back on the field soon.
Thanks, you too.